Hey, man.
Hey, how's it going?
Crazy day.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So what happened yesterday? I didn't read the news.
My name is David Charles Grusch. I was an intelligence officer for 14 years. I was my agency's co-lead in unidentified anomalous phenomena and transmedium object analysis, as well as reporting to the UAP task force, UAPTF, and eventually, once it was established, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, ARROW.
Why were you placed on the UAPTF? And the UAPTF, for the people that don't know, is Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Task Force.
The UAP Task Force director funneled a request through the Ops Center, like, hey, is there any intel officer for your agency would be willing to be a representative on the task force to kind of fill that void with expertise from NRO and the Air Force. And my boss got the email, he forwarded it to me, and he's like, do you want to do this? And I thought, well, I'm a reservist.
Yeah.
I can put it on my performance report that I worked on like a task force.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be kind of an interesting thing to see what was going on.
When did you start to realize that you weren't just kind of looking at, anomalous phenomena and trying to classify it in the air, but you were being sort of systematically lied to about an internal reverse engineering program within the government?
Yeah, I mean, certainly going into it, I thought it was going to be, air trash, some prosaic natural phenomenon. I remember starting interviewing some military members that saw some really profound stuff, like, large, triangular craft, football field size that they, hovered over them. And I was like, whoa, and these people were very serious, very upset to actually divulge that, a personal thing. It's nothing classified. It was a personal observation they had on a drive to work. Yeah. And then, one thing led to another. I had, certain colleagues of mine that I'd known for years approach me, close the door in my office and was like, look, you need to know about some other stuff you guys are not, getting access to. And kind of led down this.
Why do you think they talked? Why do you think they spoke to you?
Yeah, I think a lot of these guys were, they've kept the secret for so many years. They knew me. They knew what I was looking into. We reported to the Deputy Secretary of Defense in Congress at the time with the UAP Task Force. And I think they wanted some change. At least that's what they espoused to me is...
Why do you think they wanted change?
They felt that they were kind of limited in bringing people in, the support they were getting, their treatment was harsh sometimes, and I guess they weren't really feeling the love anymore.
What's the first moment where you saw irrefutable evidence that what you're dealing with is truth, is reality?
I mean, there were certain military cases, we were analyzing that I just really couldn't explain in a prosaic fashion.
What can you tell me about these craft? Why do you know it's exotic?
Based on the very specific properties that I was briefed on, isotopic ratios that would have to be engineered for it to be at those levels. And then, of course, read some, intel reports that were provided to me in that regard. And, I took that and I went to the agencies that wrote those reports and asked for access. And when they deny you access, then it's a thing. Yeah. So it's and that's what happened to me time after time over a couple of years.
So there wasn't a singular moment where you're like, just open the folder and you go, what the fuck is that?
It was kind of like a slow burn culmination as I was processing it, allowing my worldview to open. And yeah, I don't know if there was a singular moment. I think it was, some of the really, really trusted high level people we talked to when they, stared us straight in the face very seriously and, confirmed a lot of this information. And the quality of people we talk to, if they ever go public, it'll blow your mind who we talk to. I was like, wow, I can't believe I'm talking to X, who's a really important person, and they're confirming these certain details, and they're saying like, we need to protect this at all costs, and they're giving me kind of the whole speech about it. And I'm sitting there, it's like an out-of-body experience. I'm like, okay, well, this is a thing. I don't report to anybody, and there is no plan. Yeah. I'm not a part of some like slow drip disclosure or anything. If there is a plan, I'm totally unwitting, and holy shit, they've like controlled me in a very passive manner that is like masterclass.
Right.
But yeah, I'm not a part of some weird shit, that.
Did you ever at any point try to suss out whether you were being lied to? Because all of these people
100%.
are coming from the same programs, and so presumably there's some level of coordination between them. So how do you kind of get through and just make sure that they're not, you know, meeting in some back room saying, you say this to Dave, I'll say this to Dave, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. So, like, I thought maybe it was like a joke or something. Maybe it was like a psyop on me or something. I don't even know. And then, but the, you know, near 40 people we talked to, a lot of the guys, I've known my entire career. And, like, they wouldn't lie to me. I have, like, a friendship with them. And for them to, you know, disclose to me that kind of stuff and it ended up being a false would have totally torpedoed the friendship. And I also went out of my way to find people who don't know each other either. And I had other higher ranking colleagues of mine go talk to other people that I didn't even personally talk to. That group, of course, we took all that, and I'm like, all the people who conducted those interviews, I made them get interviewed by the Inspector General, because we're crossing our T's here, because this shit is crazy. Yeah. And I mean, you can never be perfect, but man, I was so freaking careful to make sure I wasn't getting fed some bullshit. If they were in coordination together on a disinfo campaign, holy fuck, I shouldn't even be an intel officer, because I should have, you know, sniffed that shit out. So,
in the last couple of years, have you had incidences that have caused you to be in fear for your life for addressing these issues?
Yes, personally.
There's a Chris Mellon story where he's supposed to meet with somebody on the program and he has the meeting all set up, and 2 weeks before the meeting he says that the guy just randomly has a heart attack.
We were about 2 weeks away from meeting when he died, when he had a heart attack.
What was the last special access program that leaked? They don't generally leak.
People are like, oh dude, wouldn't it be broadly leaked or whatever? I'm like, as somebody who is super cleared to a lot of that conventional stuff over the years, stuff never leaks.
Yeah.
It doesn't come out. There are plenty of things that are pretty serious, they're broad, that have never seen the light of day.
Of course, like, you're gonna tell someone that their entire life and their family and their kids, like, everything is in danger. It doesn't feel too far-fetched that someone will keep a secret if it threatens their life.
Like, look, dude, you're not getting promoted.
Yeah.
You're going to lose your job. You know, the psychology of the typical career government worker, right? Stable paycheck, pension, maintain clearance. So if any of that's threatened, you know, they're going to capitulate in most cases, right? The threatening nature of some of their indoctrinations where they're like, this is treason, you're going to Leavenworth if you ever tell anybody not in the program. And oh, by the way, what's the penalty for treason? Oh, right, execution, right? And I was like, well, fuck it. I'll be the mouthpiece for you. I'll be the leader, I guess, and I will shepherd you privately to the appropriate people that could be a recipient of your disclosure. You don't have to go public, but I'll do that.
One sort of bombshell soundbite from the hearing is Congresswoman Nancy Mace asked you about biologics. Ross Coulthart in the News Nation interview asked you about pilots coming out of these crafts. Do you want to just speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it is a mind-blowing side of it, right? It's a little easy to imagine, you know, an artifact or whatever, but when you start talking about, you know, the biological side of it, it really throws you for a loop psychologically. It did for me, and, you know, I talked to the people that, you know, were on that aspect of the program, if you will, and I mean, it comes with the territory. I mean, buckle up, I guess. I call them pilots because that's like our vernacular. I don't know what their actual job was. Yeah.
Non-human intelligence.
Yeah.
But they had bodies.
Yeah, I mean.
Were they alive? Were they dead?
I don't want to get into specifics. Okay. Yeah, I know a lot of that stuff.
Out of curiosity, why are you allowed to say that NHI pilots came out of the craft, but you can't go more?
That's all I put in the pre-publication stuff that got approved. I mean.
Got it.
I could go back and ask for more, but like I said to you earlier, man, like
not your place, not your job.
And it's helpful context for the audience to realize that you literally have like these contours with which you have to operate within.
Any specific knowledge I garnered when I was on the other side of the door, if I want to talk about that publicly, everybody who has had a job like I have has to submit it to a thing called DOPSR at the Pentagon, DoD Pre-Publication and Security Review. You know, even if it's about this stuff. Like, I know it sounds insane, but like, you literally have to say, like, this is what I want to talk about.
Why do you think they approved it?
Catch-22. So they'd have to self-identify and highlight their concerns to redact. So the office who would propose a redaction, say it's a 3-letter agency or whatever, right? They'd have to be like, this office objected to you saying crash retrievals. Here we're citing the security classification guide. No. And then you can litigate that, right, to get it unredacted if you think that's an inappropriate application of security. If it got redacted like that and it cited what organization and what security reason it is, I would just publish that. Yeah. And then the public can make its own interpretation why, the U.S. government's withholding information about that kind of thing and wanted to sequester my speech. So it's a catch-22, honestly, for them. And damn if they do, damn if they don't. I just wanted to put enough out there, touch on all the most sensitive parts, like the biologic side and like things that really need to come out.
Yeah.
But I don't want to overly disclose because it's not my job, but enough to, put the flag out there that we need to elevate this. This is serious. Some of the uncomfortable stuff, like the biologic stuff, like I mentioned during the hearing.
Yeah.
You got to realize some baggage is coming with it besides, the Indiana Jones, warehouse thing that everybody thinks.
Why do the politicians, why do the people who are higher up feel like they need to hide the, evidence? Or, I'm just, the root cause, why is this, a topic that's so...
Yeah, I can only know what the mindset was, multiple decades ago. And, anything in government, they're resistant to change. So this is the way we set it up. You remember trust in government was high back in the 40s post-war, and then also society was less secular. So there's, they're worried about the religious ontological shocks as well. And they never really developed we'll call it disclosure plan for what it's worth. And they just were like, this is the way it's been, and we're going to keep it that way. And we don't want Russia and China to be exposed to any of this info. And, we don't want to give them an edge. And unfortunately, it's that kind of low energy thinking.
If you got to ask one question to ask someone who is not alive anymore that you feel could answer a lot for you, who would you pick and what would the question be?
I would probably ask Starbucker, Oppenheimer, and be like, what was your thought process in the 40s and 50s, squirreling this away? Besides overlaying the Manhattan Project secrecy.
Because Oppenheimer was the one who created the classification that included the UFO stuff?
Oh, all those guys. The guys that were involved in Manhattan were overlaying the same ecosystem of secrecy and some of the same ways to protect stuff that they were protecting our nuclear secrets. If you read the definition of special nuclear material in the Public Atomic Energy Act of 1954, it basically states any material that releases any kind of atomic energy.
That would be retrieved crash material. Yeah. So it's kind of a sneaky way.
No, it is. If you actually read the Atomic Energy Act, if something is not a nuke, but it has radiological energy coming off it, alpha, beta decay, whatever.
Same secrecy.
Same secrecy.
What is the connection with nuclear? Is it the kind of benevolent protector theory? They don't want us to destroy ourselves? Or is it some weird, they're mining us for something and so they want to protect their resources? Or is it the power unlock thing where we could rip space-time and maybe be able to travel like they can travel? Yeah. And so, nuclear power is the axis along which we're making progress towards that.
Yeah. Yeah, it might be as simple as it's an attractant, like a fly or a mosquito to a blue light, right? It could be something as simple as that. It's so hard because to put yourself in a different sentient shoes to understand intent and all that. Could be probing, could be reconnaissance, could be just mere curiosity. Yes, they're only 2 or 3 orders of magnitude away, energy extraction from manipulating space-time and an occubear, warp drive type thing, and maybe they're interested in that too to understand our development as a civilization. Without having a penetration into their OODA loop or whatever, we'll never really know.
Yeah.
It could be all of the above. And it's really impossible to really ever gauge intent. When I started studying physics in college and I became an Intel guy and I got briefed a lot of programs, I figured, I would know if it's a thing. Yeah. And I kind of ascribed to the Enrico Fermi thing where, wouldn't it be obvious when they just be flying around and and they wouldn't care, and they would just land and say hello.
Yeah.
But that's like an overly simplistic thought.
Humanistic too, very humanistic.
Humanistic. Yeah. You're assuming that they have the same kind of intent as us. You assume they operate in the electromagnetic spectrum that we can observe normally, and then also you're assuming that they would want this kind of open, obvious kind of interaction, and are not doing cover concealment techniques where they're obfuscating their activity because maybe they're observing us for some purpose. Or what if they're von Neumann probes, right?
Do you guys know von Neumann probes?
No.
Von Neumann replicators.
Which is like self-replicating tech that's disposable in nature. If you're trying to send something out simple and engineered to explore the cosmos.
And there's always a question of like, what was the first self-replicating organism? Like, I think the big mystery is, how does chemistry turn into biology? And we have these people that say, oh, it was just this primordial soup, and you had all these chemicals kind of like floating around, and they've done experiments like this and never been able to recreate life through those experiments. And it's a really open question, like, how did life form? And I think it's probably much more trippy and interesting than like just a chemical soup. Just the chemicals happen to bond in a certain way.
Over the past days, you shared with us that you were diagnosed to be on the autism spectrum. How has this served you in your life and in your career, and how has it hindered you?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know, that I was autistic until I was like in my early 30s. So, I mean, it served me well in the government because I was super good at, doing intel and like, Dave, we want you to target this facility. Okay, you have 6 months, figure out everything, and of course I do, and it's, that was very good. But I think, especially if you're trying to maintain relationships and stuff, and how to read people's emotions and how to show your own emotions, because, autists, especially if you're, deeper in the spectrum, when you get Asperger's and that kind of stuff, you don't know how to even present your emotions in a way to a partner or, a spouse or whatever.
He would come home and tell me like general stuff, and I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, there's probably aliens. Like, that makes sense.
Unfortunately, Dave can't talk about the backlash he's received from inside the government because of an ongoing investigation. But a good example of a pretty despicable marginalization attempt from the outside was an article written a few weeks after the hearing by The Intercept. The article describes Dave's hospitalization back in 2018, an episode of alcohol consumption and suicidal ideation that led to a 911 call. But the article failed to mention any of the factors that led to this incident.
Yeah, definitely experienced some really nuts stuff.
Not only has Dave been very open with us and other media about his PTSD from combat experience, and having a close friend die while on duty.
I had a friend of mine who died doing the same stuff I was, 6 months later, going to the same locations.
He's also discussed all of the suffering that's resulted from that experience and the proactive techniques he's used to heal from that trauma.
So like EMDR therapy, HRV breath work, all that stuff, I was not a believer, but holy crap, at least it worked for me. And I highly recommend anybody that has issues with that, maybe try some of that stuff, because it seems kind of non-traditional, but it was very valuable.
In America.
The phenomenon's global, 100%. Like, I mean, you look at aerial schools, Russians have reported stuff. The Chinese have what they call the Journal of UFO Research, which is a published periodical in the People's Republic of China. And you got to remember, the CCP does not allow fringe beliefs. And it's basically tacitly endorsed and allowed to, since I think the late 90s, I want to say.
Do you think the three-body problem, kind of the dark forest analogy of aliens, was maybe sort of a form of soft disclosure from the Chinese government?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know for sure, but they've allowed this sci-fi series to be published by this Chinese author that's like pretty trippy.
Really trippy.
And I don't know, maybe that's a way for the Chinese government to acclimatize the populace. Do note in the South China Morning Post, I want to say it was June 2021, and they had an article like, oh yeah, we have a UAP task force too. We're using AI ML to look at UAP sightings. And that's really been their own overt messaging on UAP, at least to an English-speaking kind of audience. That, oh yeah, we understand it's a problem. We have a task force too.
Isn't what's happening in Ukraine kind of an argument against the practical application of these technologies, because if either side wanted it, it kind of definitively win, and you had this kind of faster than light travel thing.
Well, you'd have to be willing to reveal your ace in the hole tech, because once you use it, then you burn.
Is it something you would like to say directly to someone?
On the program?
Yeah, I know. If you're on the program, I understand empathetically, you know, the risks, what you put yourself through. We're trying to create a time where we can get this out there, recruit better people, hopefully protect those who want to go forward. If you want to go forward, there is a legal process, either through PPD 19, if it's an Intel thing, DoD, there's other inspector generals. You do have the right to go directly to Congress. And then, of course, some of the senior leaders that have known about this stuff, and I understand they were in positions where they had to make decisions just like anybody else, and they're not at the top of the pyramid. I think the time is right to cement maybe your final legacy and to help out, even though I know there'll be some admittance of, maybe decisions you've made that you wish in the past maybe you didn't make. But I think it's time to move forward, and I think we'll be stronger as a nation and as a world. I think it's going to enhance national security, enhance peer competition policing, so people aren't doing things unethical and immoral. If everything's in secret, everybody can get away with things that might be illegal, unethical, immoral, and hold our adversaries accountable publicly if this is a thing that we acknowledge. And once again, nuclear physics, broadly studied. Nuclear weapons development, that's classified. So that's all I have to say. It just come on.
Do you think in some ways UFOs are like a Rorschach test? And the way I mean that is that in some, you could use them as an auspice to sort of clamp down and create one world government or something, and create, extra surveillance and say, this is this big threat, and, we're not at the top of the food chain and they're apex predators, and, we've got to be careful, watch your step. Or they could be incredibly libertarian, because it's like, actually, terrestrial governments aren't as powerful maybe as we thought that they were. And, I think it could go in either direction.
Yeah, or it's just like they're just simply waiting until we generally care about that. We've just we look at it, we're like, huh, that's interesting. And then we go about our day and we don't even integrate the phenomenon